You are sitting in a beautiful, marble-lined public restroom in ancient Rome. You're chatting with your neighbor about the latest political gossip when nature calls. But when you look around for the toilet paper, you don't find a roll. Instead, there is a single bucket of vinegar water sitting in the middle of the room with a sea sponge attached to a wooden stick. You watch as the man next to you finishes his business, dunks that sponge into the bucket, and then hands it to you. It's been used by every person who entered this room today. Would you use it, or would you just walk away and hope for the best? For 99% of human history, the way we cleaned up after nature called was radically different, and sometimes much more dangerous, than the soft, three-ply rolls we take for granted today. The big mystery here isn't just what they used, but whether ancient humans were actually dirtier than we are now. Most of us assume that before the invention of the toilet paper roll, humanity was just living in a constant state of discomfort and filth. We imagine our ancestors just ignoring the mess, or using whatever leaf was closest. But that is a massive misunderstanding of how our bodies and our cultures evolved. In reality, the history of the wipe is a saga of incredible ingenuity and high-stakes health risks. There is a massive curiosity gap between the dirty past we imagine and the complex, tool-using reality that archaeologists are only just beginning to uncover.
To understand why ancient humans had to get so creative, we have to look at our own biology. Most animals don't have to worry about wiping. But when humans started walking on two legs, our anatomy changed. We developed large gluteal muscles, our butt cheeks, which surround the exit point of our digestive tract. This bipedal evolution created a unique problem. Waste could get trapped in a way that it simply doesn't for a dog or a cat. As soon as we became hominids with hands and a sense of personal awareness, we likely started looking for ways to stay clean, simply to avoid the massive discomfort and itching that comes from residual waste. The evidence for how we solved this problem is literally smeared across history. For thousands of years, the most common method was the closest smooth-ish object strategy. In the Stone Age, that meant pebbles and stones. If you lived near the coast, you used seashells. If you lived in the mountains, you used snow or handfuls of moss. But as civilizations grew, they started standardizing the process. In ancient Greece, people used pessoi, small, flat, circular stones or polished shards of broken pottery. These weren't just random rocks. Archaeologists have found pessoi that were specifically recut to have smooth, rounded edges. Imagine a craftsman sitting down to carefully sand the edges of a piece of pottery just so it wouldn't cause anal trauma. But the real evidence of how risky these methods were comes from the Silk Road. Researchers excavated a 2,000-year-old latrine at a relay station in northwest China. They found personal hygiene sticks, bamboo or wooden stakes wrapped with cloth at one end. When they put the residue from these sticks under a microscope, they found a nightmare. Eggs from 4 different species of parasitic worms, including roundworm, whipworm, and the Chinese liver fluke. This fluke was particularly shocking because it was found 1,500 kilometers away from its natural marshy habitat. This proved that these hygiene sticks weren't just tools for cleaning. They were accidental biological weapons, spreading infectious diseases across continents as travelers carried parasites with them from one station to the next.
Real life in the ancient world was full of these "wait, they did what?" moments. Take the ancient Greeks and their system of ostracism. When the citizens of Athens wanted to exile a politician they hated, they would write that person's name on a piece of broken pottery called an ostraka. Some scholars believe that after the vote, these shards were sometimes reused in the latrines. It was the ultimate ancient insult, literally shitting on the name of your political rival. In ancient Rome, the shared tersorium, that sponge on a stick, was so integrated into daily life that it even appears in the writings of the philosopher Seneca. He tells a horrifying story of a Germanic gladiator who was so desperate to escape his enslavement that he committed suicide in a latrine by shoving the communal sponge stick down his own throat.
Even in early America, the ingenuity continued. Before toilet paper was a mass-produced product, colonial farmers relied on the humble corn cob. Once the kernels were removed, the cob's shape was actually quite effective at cleaning, and it was at least softer than a rock. In fact, even after commercial toilet paper was introduced in 1857, many people refused to pay for it. Why buy paper when the Sears Roebuck catalog was mailed to your house for free? The Sears catalog became so famous as a bathroom staple that it usually came with a hole punched in the corner so it could be hung on a nail in the outhouse. It was only in the 1930s, when Sears started using glossy, coated paper, that people finally stopped using it because, as it turns out, glossy paper doesn't actually wipe, it just smears.
But here is the big reveal, the moment that challenges everything we think about modern hygiene. Ancient humans might have been cleaner before we invented the seated toilet. For 99.9% of our history, humans didn't sit on a throne to do their business. They squatted. Biologically, squatting is the optimal position. It correctly aligns the bowels for a quick, efficient emptying. And more importantly, it naturally spreads the buttocks as far apart as possible. Anthropologists who have lived in cultures that still squat today report that with a high-fiber diet and a proper squatting posture, there is almost no residual waste left on the body at all. By moving to the civilized, seated toilet, we actually created a more difficult cleanup process, necessitating the invention of more and more paper products to fix a problem our ancestors didn't really have in the same way.
So, what does this actually mean for us? It means that toilet paper, as we know it, is a tiny, recent blip in the human story. It didn't even become splinter-free until 1935. Before that, a splinter was a very real occupational hazard of the bathroom. Today, we cut down 27,000 trees every single day just to maintain our modern wiping habits. As we look back at the stones of the Greeks, the sponges of the Romans, and the corn cobs of the American pioneers, we're forced to realize that our essential bathroom routine is actually a series of cultural choices, not biological necessities.
We are the only species that has turned hygiene into a $30 billion a year industry that the planet might not be able to afford forever. If you were suddenly stranded on a deserted island tomorrow and had to choose one ancient method to stay clean, which would it be? The 3 stones of the Greeks, the communal sponge of the Romans, or would you try to master the ancient art of the perfect squat? Let us know in the comments which historical method you find the most or least appealing.